Hello, everybody, and welcome to the What Culture Horror Podcast, hosted by me, Ash Millman, and joined by she, Kirsten Maria.
Hello.
And by he, Josh Brown.
Hello.
And today we're going to talk to you about lovely, lovely found footage movies because they don't get enough love, they aren't appreciated enough, and they are the most underrated horror subgenre out there. I say boldly and surely because it is true. Found footage movies are a linchpin of modern horror, and as much as they kind of had their moment and have died off a bit, the most underrated films are usually found footage because they don't have the budget to push them out to wider audiences. So we've collected some of our favorites. We've collected some of the ones that we think you should be watching, or if you haven't already watched, put it on your watch list. If you have, then well done. Watch it again because it's really good. But yeah, we're going to talk about found footage movies, the things that make them. I'm gonna start this again. Sorry.
That was going well.
I got caught on myself. Right. I could feel it coming. I was like, no. If I can hand this off, it'll be okay. Right. Hello, everybody. Oh, what fuck? My hands. Right.
My hands.
I've had this twice today, Kirsten. The hands thing is caught twice now.
I've got another one later as well. I've got a pod with Cleary later, and he's going to have it as well. Right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the What Culture Horror Podcast, hosted by me, Ash Millman, and joined by she, Kirsten Ria.
Hello.
And by he, Josh Brown.
Hello.
And today we're going to be talking to you about found footage movies because they are ultimately the best horror subgenre out there and the most underrated of all the horror films. Now, I can say that very confidently and, with such assurance because it is just true. Found footage movies are great and we all love them. And I feel like people who love horror have this soft place in their heart for found footage at large, even though it gets shunned by wider society for being just shaky cam on steroids. But anyway, we're going to go into some of our favorites. We're going to go into some of the things that build up the found footage genre and kind of how movies are constructed and why that makes them underrated as a whole. And yeah, just talk all things love about found footage because we love them and they're good. So I'm going to throw it out to you guys straight away with just what do you think is the ultimate found footage horror movie? If we're going to start this off, what is the kingpin of what we should be watching?
Outrageous. Ash, the thing I love about these podcasts is that I always think I know what to expect at the opening handoff. And then you throw out this major bombshell of like, guys, what's the best, most influential found footage movie? And then I'm like, hang on, I've not computed this. I don't know what to say. But I mean, I think if I was going to go all timers, not just my personal favorites, I think I'm going to have to say a tie between Wreck and VHS 2. Both of which would be in my top 10 all-timers horror movies in general. Never mind found footage subgenre. I think both of those films are kind of, some of the best thrill rides you can get in the whole genre. And both of them utilize the found footage framing so well and so innovatively. And I love them both and would recommend them both wholeheartedly.
Absolutely. How about you, Kirsten?
Yeah, I think for me it has to be Wreck or Quarantine. I actually saw Quarantine before I saw Wreck because I didn't realize it was a remake, and I really enjoyed it. But yeah, Wreck is way better. But it's just perfect. Just the way that it starts off all seemingly innocent and then it just goes so out of proportionally bad. It's just perfect. And then obviously finishing off with a complete open-ended sort of situation where you're like, did she live? Did she not? I don't know. And it's just really well done. The zombies in it. I mean, obviously, I'm going to be a fan because it's zombies. But it's perfect. It's so good because you know that it's not real, but it's still terrifying because of just how well it's done and the actors and the characters and the zombies and the way that the zombies are in it are just really creepy. And it's just, there's just so much to it. It's perfect. It's not just a typical sort of like, oh, we're a bunch of teenagers and we're lost here and oh, look, this happened. Oh, it's a ghost sort of thing. It's perfect. It's just so well presented, and it's not too much of a slow burn either. I don't like a found footage where you just feel like you're like, it's just half of the film is just like teenagers partying and then they finally summon a demon or something. It does get into the action quite quickly. Yeah, it's perfect. I think Wreck has got to be the best found footage film.
Now, see, there's reason to this madness and me throwing out this question, because I would also say Rec. So it is 3 Recs all the way around, and we can begin with Rec being the best found footage movie of them all, which, like, it is obviously one of the peak in the genre. It's the one that gets brought up the most. It is the one that's been hyped up the most. It's had its remake into Quarantine, as Kirsten has said. It is a great film, and it is made incredibly well, and it benefits from the found footage formula so much as a scary movie that wouldn't work in any other format. Now, I'm going to give you a quick history lesson, just a very quick one. Found footage started off with Cannibal Holocaust in 1980 and then was popularized by the Blair Witch Project in 1999. And then kind of everything that's come from there has been, oh, we can make this on a very low budget for maximum monetary potential gain. So people look at it and think, how much money can I make from this? A lot, I'm going to do that. And it works really well with internet viral campaigns and tying into modern horror as we know it now. So our kind of age, where the 80s had slashers, we have found footage. And that is kind of how the whole thing has developed. And Rec is the pinnacle of that, I think. And how it leans into mockumentary format, where it's, oh, okay, we're going to do this. We're going to go around this fire station, see what's going on. And then it devolves into something else. Just kind of reflects our whole internet culture of wanting to watch something, be a voyeur, as you are in horror anyway, but with internet culture, watching something play out, get a bit of information as you would on TV, whatever, and then it devolving into a horror movie and having to keep filming because the world needs to know, and the internet being the system that you can pass that out through. But yes, there is my big long ramble about Rec being just incredible, because it is a great movie. And I also think the thing that ties it up there as one of the top picks is its use of night vision, which you get with found footage. Please take it away. Talk about night vision.
There's something about night vision, no matter how overused as a trope and an aesthetic choice it is, that just always gets me. Even when, and not to go on about games too much, but you know Outlast, when in that game, that's a game from the perspective of like this found footage framing. You literally use a camcorder and you use it to look, and you use the night vision of the camcorder to see in the dark. And there's something so inherently spooky about being trapped in that point of view, being in that kind of, it's like, you know, when you're scared of the dark and you don't, and you can't make anything out in like the distance. You don't know whether that thing next to your door is just a bunch of coats or whether it's the Babadook or something. I think you get that effect with night vision, because if you just throw up kind of like a dark room on screen, it's hard to make things out. It doesn't translate well through the lens of the camera. Whereas you can get that kind of mystery or that kind of sense of shapes blending into each other far more vividly, I think, when you throw on that green filter, because you can make out just enough through the screen to kind of simulate the effect of you waking up in the middle of the night and being in the dark and your eyes adjusting. I think it very much trades on that idea in a way that is elegantly presented to the audience.
Yeah, I agree. I think the scariest thing I think about using the night vision mode within a camera is the fact that you as the audience are potentially seeing something that the characters aren't. You know, they did it in Silence of the Lambs with Buffalo Bill, where Clarice is sort of feeling around and she's getting inches within Buffalo Bill's face, and we know that, but she doesn't, and that's what's terrifying. And I can tell you right now, it's quick story time, that I have experienced this, and it is terrifying. I did a ghost hunt on my own with maybe about 2 or 3 other people, and we went down these catacombs, and I found, God knows how, I was in college at the time, I said, do you have a camera with night vision? I need it. And they were like, yeah, I think so. It's like really old. It's like a million years old. So I got it, and I was like having so much fun with it. And it is terrifying. It is terrifying when you are in the pitch black and you physically cannot see anything with your own eyes, and you have to rely on this little green screen. Oh, it is terrifying. So yeah, it is not fun. And I think I ended up having a panic attack and just giving up, because I was just terrified of seeing this little demon or something on this screen, or seeing a woman or something, and not knowing and being able to see that with my own eyes is just yes. So that is why I think that works so well within these found footage, is just knowing that you could potentially see something within that screen that you might not necessarily see with your own eyes. And yeah, it makes then filming anything in real life terrifying from then on. Yeah, it's perfect.
Oh God, absolutely. I think like what both of you said there, one, it obscures things that you do see when you see it with the green filter on. It's all uncanny, and then it also shows you things that you can't see. So it's that weird, like, liminal space between vision and what you actually know is real and what you don't know is real, and trusting in a piece of technology to tell all of this to you. And I think that kind of ties into the found footage genre as a whole as well, because it's just you're watching through someone's device that you could easily have. You could take a camera around and make a film, and these crazy events could happen to you, and you would have to record them so the internet would know. Like it keeps that whole framing narrative tied very specifically to a type of camera and an accessibility to an audience at large, rather than very fancy filmmaking devices. It makes it very rooted in reality. And of course, found footage films always use, or for the large part use, actors that you're not going to know anything about, who are first timers, who haven't had their big break. So you don't know who these people are. They could just be, you know, Jimmy from down the road, Ellen from up the street. I don't know what the name of the locations. They could be all sorts
Good
of
old
people.
Ellen.
Yeah, Ellen and Jimmy.
Speaking of Ellen and Jimmy from down and up the street, I think you're onto something really kind of salient there, Ash, because like it uses this technology that we all have access to that inherently roots it in our own reality, and that's aided by, like you said, the use of unknown actors. It feels as if we're watching, like you said, voyeuristically someone else's footage, someone else's real footage. And some horror movies have traded on that more literally than others. Obviously, the Blair Witch Project had that huge campaign about, you know, these are not actors, these are real people, they're missing, we're going to do a documentary about it, we're going to put up missing posters around US cities and stuff. But even for as silly as it sounds, I remember being very young and actually watching the documentary about the Blair Witch Project, the false documentary, you know, like the in-universe documentary about these missing teenagers, and fully buying it. I mean, admittedly, I was way too young to be watching it. I was like 10 or 11 at the time, but I was so caught up in that kind of myth, in the fact that found footage in general, through its use of technology, through its use of unknown actors, through its entire framing device, it links you more closely with that scenario. It allows you to put yourself in that experience, or at least it makes it's kind of like reduces the barriers between you and what's happening. Because even if you're watching it on a cinema screen, the fact that the aesthetic choices are making it look so rough and ready, so kind of, you know, like it's just been uncovered, like you said, it adds that extra element of verisimilitude. I always used to get that word wrong. Like realism and truth to it that you just don't get in a pristine blockbuster horror movie, which kind of sounds mad because you have to reconcile that with the fact that, oh, someone's going to be filming this whole thing, someone's going to upload it, but that doesn't matter because you have the immediacy of the aesthetic choices carrying it.
What do you guys think about, obviously the name is found footage, the footage has to be found, so everybody usually dies at the end to make it that. So do you think that kind of takes away from how the genre works, or do you think it aids it and, you know, makes the whole thing a bit scarier, because you know deep down these people aren't going to make it out alive, and these strange like producers or whatever have found the footage and put it to screen so the people know. And also, I keep saying that, the people must know, they must see. But yeah, do you think that having death always as the end trope kind of plays into a beneficial thing for the found footage genre?
I don't know. It's difficult, actually. Sorry, I'm just still trying to figure out if it actually is.
Interrupting your thought process. For me, like when the found footage kind of like boom started again after Paranormal Activity, there were a lot of people, you know, wondering about the logistics of the in-universe explanation of how is this going to get uploaded, you know, what's going on with this. And I think as we kind of just got used to the framing and got used to it, and we didn't have to worry about the actual, you know, logistics of it, we could suspend our disbelief and just know that this was kind of footage being filmed, and that's just how it works. That's just the framing device. And yes, that does come with its own kind of, you know, expectations. Like you said, you expect every one of these films to end the same way, with the camera falling to the floor and the person being dragged off and being killed or something. But I don't think that kind of damages the impact of those endings in any real way. There are, of course, some lazy examples out there that just repeat it verbatim and expect it to be scary because other people have done it. But I think when it comes to found footage, there is a certain embedded expectation by the filmmakers and the audience of, you kind of know what you're going to get. You've seen how these movies play out. You know the rules of how they play out. And I think it's more interesting to see how, you know, filmmakers kind of flex within that, what could be a limited space, and still deliver something exciting, still deliver something that's effective, even if it is, in general and on paper, beat for beat what we might have seen before. You know what I mean? Like, we've seen so many unoriginal horror movies that have come out, so many rip-offs, so many slasher film rip-offs, so many genre imitations, so many remakes. And yet, often the impact isn't lessened because if the execution is done well, it doesn't really matter if it's something that we've kind of seen done before. If you bring enough to the table in terms of, filmmaking skill and selling those scares, I think it's fine. And if anything, for me personally, I think the repetition actually helps. I think that's why it's become such a comforting genre, because we kind of know what we're going to expect. We kind of know what we're getting in for, so we can turn any of these movies on and kind of have a level of expectation that we're going to enjoy this because they can't be too different.
That's a very some sublime thoughts there, Josh. Very good.
Thank you.
No,
I was pulling them out my butt.
I personally, I think that knowing everyone's going to die, or expecting that everyone's going to die, always plays into a good thing for fan footage, because we spoke about endings before. We spoke about horror movie endings, what we think of those, and I think it kind of really plays into the horror movie downbeat ending. And often, fan footage doesn't have like everyone die in an obvious way. It comes as a last minute shock at the end, so you'd never know quite how it's going to pan out exactly. You just know something bad's going to happen, and you have this pessimistic, worrisome, stressful, tension-building feeling the whole way through because you know it's got to end badly. I think that always plays into the atmosphere and how these horror movies work and kind of their effect on you much more effectively than people give it credit for, because as much as you know what's going to happen, bad things are going to happen. There's not really going to be a reprieve.
Yeah, I mean, there's something kind of to be said about knowing, like, the inevitability, you know what I mean? The inevitability of death in these movies. There is something tragic that I think filmmakers can tap into, because even if you know they're going to die, it's perhaps the false hope that comes before them, seeing these characters think they're going to be okay, and then, like you said, not knowing when that last-minute twist is going to happen, not knowing when something is going to return and that camera is going to fall and they are going to be dragged off. Like, the inevitability that this has to end a certain way, or at least, it's likely that it's going to end a certain way, I don't think undermines the horror at all, because there's something scary about kind of knowing these people are doomed in the first place. Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, both of you. I think it's one of those things that we have just come to expect now for found footage. Is you go into it knowing, like, well, the footage has been found because someone has found it, which means that they have died or perished or something has happened. However, I think that because people now expect you to expect that, it's nice when you do get a bit of a twist ending, which is where I'm going to quickly sneak in my two examples of some underrated found footage movies, which is Grave Encounters, which actually, again, spoiler alert if you haven't seen it, I highly suggest watching it, which actually ends with not everyone dying, but it still ends on a bit of a cliffhanger in which this poor man is just stuck in this other world, this limbo, and it just kind of leaves you hanging there with this poor man in this hallway, and you can hear these things kind of sneaking up on him, and he's like, I don't know if this is happening, I just feel like I'm going crazy, and you're just left with that situation where he's just there now. That's him, that's his life from now on. And another example of where not everyone really dies, again, spoiler alert, is As Above, So Below, which is a brilliant film, completely underrated. I don't know if a lot of people have even bothered to watch this or find out about it, where a group of teenagers kind of investigate the catacombs underneath Paris. And yes, a few people do die. However, I think it's 3 of them managed to survive at the end, and that is how the footage is then leaked to the public, is because there's been a lot of people that have tried to investigate the catacombs, but no one really knows what's going on down there, and people have gone missing, but somehow these people managed to survive, and it's just mind-blowing, and they just kind of all look at each other like, oh, okay, well, I guess we should probably show people this then. Like, this is what actually happened, to show people, yeah, there's something weird going on down there. And I think that's what's brilliant is what's so brilliant about these found footage films, is when they do twist it on their head, because you think, oh, well, clearly they're all going to die. And as soon as that one person dies, you're like, right, here we go. One by one, they're all going to plop off. So yeah, actually kind of turning it on their head and having even just one survive is just leaving you with that question as to, right, well, then what happens now? How did people get this footage? In that universe, do people now know that the catacombs are incredibly haunted and they don't go there? Did this person find this footage of this poor man just stuck in limbo? Like, how did they get hold of that? Does that mean he escaped then, because he obviously didn't die? So yeah, it's a brilliant way of kind of turning things on their head, because they know that you're expecting one thing, but to turn it around and be like, actually, no, got ya. This is what happened. This is how, and like, again, not kind of giving you that solidarity ending, but letting you know, well, he's alive, so clearly he escaped. So yeah, I think it doesn't necessarily have to be, but it's just so commonplace now that we're just like, well, that's clearly what's going to happen. So yeah.
Absolutely. Them setting up so many like rigid formulas with it means that there's so much more to play around with when it comes to actually delivering something a bit different and surprising. I think that's a really great point to kind of jump into what we would recommend as our underrated horror movies. I know you've mentioned yours there, Kirsten. There's so many found footage films that we have written down, but like there's way more to talk about with other ones out there. And I think from your mentions, I'm going to jump off onto One Cut of the Dead, because oh my God, that is the most hilarious found footage horror film I have seen in a long time. I've never belly laughed at a movie quite as hard as I have at One Cut of the Dead. And I recommend it to everybody that I possibly can, because it is just a fantastically made and cared about film. You can tell the people making it love what they were doing and had a good time with it. It's a good feeling movie. It's a feel good movie where nice things happen. And I can't really tell you more than just stick past the first half an hour, because to say more on it just ruins the whole concept completely. But it's not what you think it is.
See, this is funny, Ash, because you actually recommended this to me like ages ago, and I got around to watching it. I was looking forward to it. I saw all the reviews, and I remember starting it and thinking, what has she gotten me into here? What have I been recommended? What am I going to watch for the next hour and a half? But yeah, that thing is so smart and so much more than it appears, that even if you don't think it's your thing, don't pass judgment until you've seen everything. Because yeah, it's one of the most inventive ones, certainly, and one of the most surprising and gross and funny found footage movies I've seen in a long time. So thanks for that, Ash. I really enjoyed it in the end.
It's such a good movie. Like, you go and watch it. Don't think anything about it. Don't read too much about it. Just go and watch it and stick through the first half an hour. That's all the recommendation I can give you for it. It's good. It's called One Cut of the Dead. It has zombies in it. That's all you need to know. Zombie found footage movie. It's great. But yeah, Josh, what would you pick out as your like first kind of underrated one?
Honestly, this has been the hardest one yet. I mean, it's always difficult to only pick out a few examples, but I was going through the list of ones that I've seen, and there was just so many. So I'm going to try to keep it brief. I've got three, but two of them are kind of the same. I've got Creep 1 and 2, which are actually, I'd say, probably more well-known now. When they first came out, these Netflix found footage horror movies they kind of flew under the radar. It's about this character, this creep, played by Mark Duplass, who is he's given it his all. He's like hamming it up. He's been very strange, but essentially in the first one, he invites a filmmaker around his house because he has a terminal illness, and he's kind of wanting to chronicle his final days. But not everything is it seems. And unlike a lot of the other ones that we're talking about, this isn't a supernatural found footage movie. It's very much kind of like rooted in reality in the stranger than fiction sort of way. So those two are incredible, like one of the best horror sequels I think we've had recently, and they're both incredibly short. I think both of them are under 90 minutes, but they get the job done and are completely unconventional. And kind of on the same line of thought, I'd also recommend Sacrament, which was made by Ty West, and that's about like this group of filmmakers infiltrating this cult essentially and trying to get to the bottom of it. And again, everything kind of seems too good to be true on the surface, and it turns out that it is. That is more of a slow burn, but I think Ty West in general is very, very good. Like, I had a huge kind of interest in his films about 5 years ago or something, where I was just watching them all. And I think him more than anyone else does that slow burn sense of dread building up to kind of this rising, cathartic, explosive ending, like better than a lot of modern horror directors. So this, again, two movies that aren't straight, like gory, scary things, but both of which are definitely working in the framework of horror and doing their best to kind of, like I said before, flex within this framework that we think we know so well.
Yeah, the Creep in particular, great shout. I feel like that kind of really doubles down on found footage being able to involve you in the moment and it feeling like a really personal kind of framing, like you're there, you are the camera, it's your eyes that are being used. Creep in particular was one that I was like, oh my God, Mark Duplass is talking to me, because it's only like him and I think his filmmaker is called Aaron. It's only him and Aaron, like Joseph and Aaron doing anything. in this film. So it just feels like a very personal movie where you're very personally involved, and like you're there witnessing all these things as they're happening, and kind of talking to him and having this back and forth with him, because Aaron really reflects what you would be thinking in that situation. Just being like, what the hell? What's going on?
Well, that's one of the best things about like the found footage framing, is that by its inherent kind of limitations of the framing device, it puts you in that moment, you know what I mean? It makes you feel like you are that character, and often the best found footage protagonists are just reflections of you. You put yourself in that situation like that character is, and when, you know, Mark Duplass is being very weird, you're questioning it in the same way, but at the same time there's that kind of intimidation, because you do feel like this guy, you know, is talking to you directly, and you're in his home, there's not really anywhere else to go. What are you going to do? I can't really escape the situation, and it puts you in that mindset like so well.
Definitely. I think other underrated ones, just to like throw a couple of my choices in, would be Lake Mungo, which we talk about quite a lot on the channel because it needs shouting out. It's incredible. It's a mockumentary format about basically the aftermath of a girl's death in a family, and then talking about their supernatural experiences afterwards. If you haven't seen it, again, I'm going to leave it there because it does an incredible ending. It does an incredible twist, and it's very freaky and scary. So if you like a scary found footage, then Lake Mungo is definitely it. The other would be The Taking of Deborah Logan, which is also just bat crazy by the end.
Ash, I don't think I've ever met anyone else who likes The Taking of Deborah Logan.
Yeah, I must admit, I'm not a fan, because I think it was just that ending. I was like, what the hell is happening? And it just completely threw me off. For the rest of it was really good, and then I was just so confused at the end. I was like, no,
yes, no, it's so good. No. I was so afraid.
honest to God,
she's scary herself, but I won't spoil the ending because it is really weird and messed up. But yeah, that bit, I was just like, huh? What? Like, that's terrifying and also just weird, and I can't deal with it, so no.
I think I lost all of my friends' trust when it was in university when I watched it, and we used to get like people around to like watch these horror movies or something, and I remember one night it was my turn to pick, and I just watched The Taking of Deborah Logan, and I was so blown away by it. I was like, right, guys, you've got to watch this. We'll all gather around. We'll have a few drinks. We'll get very scared about this movie. And I don't think a recommendation has ever backfired more. I was sat there knowing everyone was hating it, everyone taking the mick out of it, and I was just like, no, it's good. It's spooky. I don't care if it gets silly. The silliness is really fun as well. Oh, just like it as much as I do. So I will totally share that recommendation, Ash.
Yeah, it absolutely it does the trick. It does the trick. Another one I've got, honestly, I've got so many. I love found footage. There's like such a long list of ones that I want to talk about. The last one I'm going to mention before we move on to kind of just looking at mockumentary in general is just Unfriended, because Unfriended is great. And this gives me opportunity to say we have launched our horror channel, which is out there looking lovely. And we did our lovely trailer based on an Unfriended spoof, because Unfriended is great and it's based on internet horror. And it is the natural apex of found footage movies, I think, because it's that reflective internet, viral, all these people experiencing this thing and then sharing it around kind of format that found footage takes on. Unfriended is kind of like this strange Skype person infiltrates a Skype chat who is actually a creepy unknown person. I don't want to give anything away. A creepy unknown person who then just bothers everyone for the next hour, being like, oh, tell the truth or I'm going to make you do a bad thing. And this is really a really bad description of Unfriended, but it's a good movie and it's definitely worth watching. But so we move on a little bit more. Mockumentary. My voice broke out of excitement for found footage. Mockumentary film in found footage is obviously you either have a bunch of teens, a bunch of young adults, a bunch of whoever, children if it's The Visit, running around, filming things, going, look at this scary thing that's going on, oh my God, but we've got to keep the camera rolling. The other one is, oh, look, it's a mockumentary. Let's tell a story that we can from all these improvised interviews and strange happenings that we've pieced together to tell a story. And we've got to keep filming because we've got to let everyone know about this secret underground thing. Is there any that you prefer between those two or you think are more effective, or just any thoughts on the difference between those two? Because mockumentary is such an inherently found footage like subgenre of a subgenre.
The fourth kind.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, the fourth kind is just the perfect mockumentary, because even till this day I'm like, was it real? I don't know if it was real. And when I watched it, I was like relatively young, and I loved Mila. I still love Mila Jovovich. I think she's amazing. And it basically, yeah, it's like it's like the perfect mockumentary setup in a way that it has this celebrity come out and basically say to you, this is all real footage, and I'm going to be portraying this character so that you can see what she experienced. And then they also show brief clips of the actual person. And again, I'm still like, is this actually? I don't know, because they just do a really good job of just making you feel like, oh yeah, well, I mean, if they've got Mila Jovovich portraying this character, then like they're not going to hire two actors to play a made-up person. And it's just brilliant. And it's just all about alien abductions. And I know for a fact that it really scared Ash, because she doesn't like aliens.
I don't.
But yeah, there's just this one scene near the end which is just terrifying, and it's just, yeah, it's basically about Mila Jovovich's character that she's portraying. I can't remember the name of the woman, and yeah, she just goes through the 4 kinds of abduction, and it is just so well done, and it's so terrifying, because again, you're just sat there like, is this real? I don't know. Like, I still don't know. Is this 100% real? Because like, it can't be real. Like, surely it can't be. But it's just done in such a perfect way that you're still at the end going, okay, well, I'm not sleeping tonight, because I'm pretty sure that there's a small part of me that believes that might have actually happened. Yeah, it's really good. If you haven't seen it, highly suggest watching The Fourth Kind. It's brilliant.
And you never look at owls the same way again, honestly.
Oh God, no.
I used to think owls were such a nice, wise creature. Now, devils, horrible.
Demons.
Yeah. What about you, Josh?
I think that they've both got their own strengths. Like we said, I don't think Creep would have been as effective if you had kind of more of a formal mockumentary framing. You know what I mean? That works because it is just one dude with a camcorder in another dude's house, and you don't trust what's going on there. But I love when you do get the proper mockumentary framing, or at the very least you have, you know, like a proper film crew recording everything, and they're trying to get footage to make something more than, you know, just a document of what they're experiencing. I like seeing like the subtle changes in the performances. I love it when you have a really good villain who knows he's been recorded and kind of picking up on the changes in the performance between, you know, them kind of candidly being captured and how they want to present themselves to the world. I think there's something you can really kind of tap into, because everyone is different on camera, you know what I mean? Like, we try to be as natural as possible when we do these podcasts, and I like to think I am, but even then, it's kind of like a slightly different version of yourself, isn't it? You're a slightly different version of yourself when you go on Twitter, or you go on Facebook, you go on Instagram and stuff, and kind of, you know, tapping into those different segments of your own personality or your own persona and stuff, especially when it comes to these larger-than-life villains or these intimidating characters, or even the heroes, how they change when they know they're being recorded. I think that's something fascinating about, you know, mockumentary in general, and obviously that's heightened when it comes to horror, because then you get the opportunity to have, you know, subvert the audience's expectations, play with what they think they know about these people and what they think their motivations are. And it constantly kind of keeps you on edge, because you're wondering, is this who they really are, or is this who they're presenting themselves to be?
Yeah, definitely. There is that whole kind of like strange divide between, you know, what you're watching is fiction, but it feels so real. And then, I don't know how to resolve these two things together. And in mockumentary then doubles down on that, because it's presenting things in one way to then like change them up at the end, as documentaries do. It's like, here's all the information and here's the twist. Like creeped off my chair. But yeah, I think if we just kind of come full circle on our conversation a little bit, if you have any more underrated shout outs, we'll do some more at the end. We'll do a little rundown of any we've left out, so people have like a little watch list at the end. But just to bring it full circle, I'm just going to ask you straight up our question of the pod. Why is fan footage the most underrated genre? Like, because we've talked about all the benefits of it, all the good things that it does, all the exciting ways that it actually works, and why we love it and the films we love in the genre. But why do you think that it is so underrated as a thing? Do you think that it does itself no favors with the amount that there are, or anything else?
I think it's because it's easily written off. Like we've said a few times here, you know, there is a very clear framework, and that comes from, movies like The Blair Witch Project or Paranormal Activity making so much money and instantly inspiring copycats. I think there is a kind of aversion to the framing in general. There's a lot of people who can't get over that barrier of, well, why are they filming it if they're in a horrible position? Who's uploading the footage and stuff that fundamentally doesn't matter. You don't get those kind of questions with other horror movies. There is a certain suspension of disbelief that I think, at least back, in the late 2000s and early 2010s, was harder to overcome. And I think there's just kind of a false perception that a lot of them are lazy and cheap and kind of slapped together. Like, the implication is they're found footage because they have no other choice, because they couldn't be made otherwise, which I don't think is further from the truth. I think, making a found footage movie, that's not just something you do because you don't have the money to make a regular movie. It's something that is a conscious, effort on the part of the director to make a very specific style of horror movie. And for me, that's often a good choice, because I think it's a very effective way to, like we've been saying, instantly put you in the perspective of a character, instantly make for scares that are kind of like, I won't say easily set up, but more naturally set up. You have a lot of room to play with, just from the sheer limitations of your field of vision and stuff. But with that, I do think kind of comes this, false perception from even some people in the horror kind of fandom that it's, limiting, or it's restrictive, or it's just the same movie over and over again, which, is, like I said before, is kind of true in the broad sense of the genre tropes, but fundamentally, I think giving it way too little credit.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you, Josh. I think the main reason why they are so easily written off is because they are so easily done. You don't need a big budget. Like, literally anyone could just grab their phone and make like a found footage film. It's so easily done, and that's why there is hundreds of them. And even me, as a horror found footage fan, always goes into a new found footage film with a slight bit of doubt that it's probably going to suck, because it is just so easily, like, anyone could do it. And there is just so many of them. And I think that you do really have to kind of weed your way through and find a decent one. And unfortunately, you do kind of have to watch every found footage from start to finish to know if it was good or not, because sometimes there are some really good, clearly there are some very hidden gems here. But I think that is why they're just so easily written off, is because of how easy they are to pull off, how many there are of them. And then, like Josh said, just how people kind of go into these films going, well, how did people get hold of them? And, well, why are they still filming it? And again, even like me watching them nowadays, I'm still sort of there like, would you still be filming it? I don't know. But that's besides the point. Like, you could say that about any horror film. Like, oh, why are they not walking around a house and not turning any other lights on? It's just, that's what makes it scary. At the end of the day, a found footage horror film is still a horror film. They have to still implement these things to make it scary. You have to just kind of ignore those things. But yeah, I don't know. I think they're brilliant. I just think the sheer volume of them is why they get written off so easily, and just disregarded as to whether they will be good or not. But very clearly, there are some brilliant found footage, underrated films out there, and you just got to kind of weed through them and see.
I think you mentioned something like there as well, Kirsten, the fact that anyone can make this, which is true. And there is the assumption that, anyone can pick up a camera and do it themselves. But also, I think there's a severe undervalue in how much effort it takes to make a good one. Anyone can pick up a camera and start recording and make a found footage movie, but it takes a lot of skill and a lot of effort to make that footage, which is supposed to look rough, either one, be believably kind of rough without losing the clarity of conventional narrative cinema. You know what I mean? It's a big task to get one of these to look authentic while also, being well shot and well kind of told in the script and stuff. So I think, people just write it off by saying, well, anyone can do that. You can't. No one can do that. I mean, you can do a bad one, but you can't just do it well by doing it yourself.
Yeah, I think I definitely agree. I think there's an inherent flawed quality to found footage, which makes lots of people brings lots of people to it, because they're like, oh, it's so raw, it's so real, and there's these things that don't add up. But that's just human nature, baby. And then there's a lot of people who look at that and go, I don't want to watch a flawed film. I want to watch a piece of art, a piece de resistance every time they put on a movie. And I personally love found footage. I think it's wonderful. I think it's a great genre. I think it is an underrated genre and deserves way more love. But yeah, just to kind of like wrap this up, if you have any more shout outs you want to do, if you have any more things you want to bring up, because There's so many.
many.
If there's any good ones out there that you think need a little shout out, let's do that here.
Afflicted is really good. That's the only one I've got that I don't think I've mentioned, but I really like Afflicted. I think that's quite good.
Yes.
Yeah, I can't think of it. I've shouted out all the ones that I know for fact are brilliant, whether they are popular or not. Grave Encounters, Fourth Kind, As Above, So Below. Definitely watch those. They are fantastic.
Excellent. Right, I've got the UFO Abduction, which is the McPherson tape, which is one of the first found footage movies I watched, which I don't like alien horror. I don't know why I watch it all the time because it really upsets me, but I hated that because it was it was sold around it being real, and because it is such a scuzzy quality, it convinced me as a kid. I was like, oh my god, I'm gonna be abducted. So UFO Abduction. We spoke about Lake Mungo, Troll Hunter, which we haven't brought up, which is so good, so ridiculous, big fantasy trolls and found footage going, oh look, troll. It's so good. The Tunnel, which actually capitalizes on another found footage thing, which is really underrated, which is they don't explain what the monster is. Found footage doesn't have to explain what it's doing because you know as much as the characters and they don't know what's going on. And The Tunnel does that really well. Chronicle, we all like Chronicle. It's not really a horror movie, but it needs bringing up. Chernobyl Diaries, The Borderlands, best ending of a found footage film. Best ending, most ridiculous ending. Watch it to the end and go, what? And then read about it afterwards because it's so silly. And Ghostwatch because it needs mention. And the Poughkeepsie tapes as well.
Yes, I had that on my list. I completely forgot about that. Yeah, that is gross.
Yeah, this was me like battering out a list before I went. I was like, what? I need to talk about all of these films. There isn't room for all of them, but there is a little watch list of faves. If you haven't seen those, then go and watch them. These are all immensely underrated found footage films, along with everything else we've spoken today. But yeah, tell us what you think. What do you think about found footage movies? Do you think they're underrated? Do you think they are overrated? Do you think we've been talking out of our butts? Or do you agree that they are fantastic? Because we are all big found footage fans. It's kind of like you're watching a found footage thing if you're watching the YouTube video because we're all on your screen and it's scary, I guess. Ooh.
Yeah.
So that plays into it. It's a meta podcast. But yeah,
every single time we start or do one of these podcasts, Ash, I'm certain it's going to turn into Unfriended 3. Like without a doubt, it's going to happen at one point. And I'm scared for when it actually does.
Well, we make a joke about it all the time that it's going to be Unfriended. Especially every time I do this, I mess up the introduction. We have to do it again. So it's ample time for a demon to come in, to be honest. So. Let us know what you think. Let us know in the comments. Let us know on Twitter if you're on there. If you want to tweet us questions to WC Horror as well. And you can let us know what you want us to talk about or just any questions you have about the horror community, the horror movie world that you want us to answer. Please get in touch. You can find me at Ash Millman and you can find Kirsten
at Kirsten Ria with 2 A's.
And Josh
at Josh Brune with 2 O's.
There we go. We've made it to the end of the podcast of going through this ending, wading through it. We've made it. So have a good day. Have a nice morning, evening, afternoon, whatever time it is. Have a nice time there. And I'm going to be quiet now. Thank you for watching. Please come back again soon. Subscribe to What Culture Horror. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.